Hey everyone, welcome back to Actually Useful, the podcast where we diagnose what's wrong with the internet and we talk with the good folks who are trying to make it better. What's up, AJ and Alex? How are you guys doing?
What's up? Great to be here.
Hey, excited to be here with y'all.
Yeah. We normally start with news, although to confess, the actual non-enshittification news cycle has been so insane the last week that all I have looked at is non-enshittification news. So I don't know if you guys have any news, but the one exciting enshittification thing is that this week, Cory Doctorow Daddy's new book came out, Enshittification, came out October 7th. Go grab it everywhere you can get books. We're definitely going to do like a book chat episode about that book soon.
I think the headline is that enshittification is now the headline. I saw the New Yorker recently did The Age of Enshittification. We got Daddy Doctorow's book coming out. I feel like this term has now officially reached the mainstream. Do you think it's safe to say that?
Yes, I agree. Yeah, you have sent a couple different like big mainstream articles this week that reference enshittification. I'm very curious if the book is going to like expand on the definition, because originally Cory Doctorow's definition of enshittification is that it's like specific to tech platforms, like it's a tech constrained definition and the solutions for it are related to tech. But the solutions are not bad solutions to cope with late stage capitalism overall. And I see people on the internet using enshittification to refer to like any woes caused by late stage capitalism where like product quality is going down or just like service quality goes down. And so I'm kind of curious, like, I think the subtitle of Cory Doctorow's book is like why everything is getting worse and what to do about it, which to me, it doesn't have tech in the title. So I'm very curious if this is going to be a tech book or if he's going to like broaden it out.
Me too. Can't wait to book club. It's going to be my first episode of book discussion episode since I'm always gone for them.
Dude, we're excited.
Ariel, I have to say, I was like, I've listened to probably all the episodes of your show, and I was like excited for like a huge news segment, but you start off saying I don't have much, and I was like, what? It's my episode where there's not much? Like,
I'm so sorry.
I don't know.
Do you have any news?
I was thinking about it while y'all were talking, and this is going to be super geeky. Like, I live in the podcasting world, but right now it's being tested at the RSS level. So that's like what podcasting is built on. It's a old school tech called RSS, but still how podcasting gets syndicated to Apple, Spotify, Amazon, everywhere, right? And there is a new tag being tested in there, which allows a video to be pulled straight from the RSS like an audio is. Now, as of right now, YouTube owns, like, if you think video, you go to YouTube. Like, you don't really think anywhere else at this point in the world, right? Like, if you're going to watch videos online, everyone's like, yeah, it's YouTube. But I do think that if RSS is able to actually find a way to tap into that, anywhere that you could possibly play a video, so it doesn't have to be one website, could actually pull it just like you could pull an RSS feed. So think about it. Like, you could listen to your podcast on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, along with thousands of other places. Like, in podcasting, us nerds, we use something called Good Pods. There's a ton of them now. Overcast is another one. I'm not going to get to it. There's so many places where podcasters listen to podcasts, but now thinking that all these could potentially show you video as well, I think, not that I'm looking to like level the playing field, but I feel like YouTube has a monopoly on video. So to me, that's like really interesting news, knowing that that's actually being worked on by people much smarter than me. I gave my feedback as I guess somebody who has some influence in the podcasting space, saying I think this is a good idea. Please pursue it, right? But to me, I think that's kind of interesting news that, in my mind, makes the internet more useful if there's more accessibility when it comes to video.
See, Alex, this is why I didn't have any news. The universe told me that you were going to have good news, and it is good news. Normally our news is like bad news. And so that's great. I did see this article, maybe it was a New York Times article, but the headline was, who is watching all these video podcasts? Which I think is really funny, of just like how many podcasts have gone video. Like we do video primarily so that we can have short form video content to put on socials, which I think is what a lot of people do. But I do think it's really funny to think about like that there's probably people who just watch podcasts instead of TV, which is like just such a chill format to be watching. That's
I've
awesome.
never had the luxury. I mean, I don't know how old either of you are, so I'm gonna assume that you all are a bit younger than me, but maybe not so young that you can sit there for an hour and a half and watch a podcast when you could just listen to it, right? Like, something about my brain says, this is inefficient, Alex. Like, go for a walk while you're listening instead of sitting here watching three people talk, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's like sort of the benefit of a podcast or an audiobook, is that you can like be doing things while you're not, watching with your eyes.
Yep. A friend of mine put it this way. He said that podcasting is the least intrusive form of media you could ever consume. All it requires is your ears. I was like,
Yeah.
that's well said. You don't need your eyes. You don't need to be involved. You just put in your ears and you can do whatever you want after that. I was like, that's well said.
I mean, speaking of intrusive, that's another news that's maybe not this week, but last week, but the new Meta Ray-Ban display. That's what yeah. I guess it was I'm looking this up. It was 3 weeks ago. But to the point of having like visuals always be obtrusive, it just seems like you're never going to be able to just see the world anymore. It's like always these feeds, notifications.
The launch that just like completely flopped, which is awesome.
I did see somebody wearing those, and I'll be real. I wasn't just talking to this guy, and I'm usually very like I'm in the conversation, so I'm not like distracted. I'm there, but I kept on thinking like, is he recording this? And like, what's happening to? Like, why are you wearing those glasses when you're talking to me? Like,
Yeah.
am I going to turn to some weird AI spoof thing? Like, what's going on here?
Probably.
It felt
That
weird. It felt like there was
tracks.
someone else eavesdropping on our conversation.
I feel like it does make sense as the value proposition. Like I've seen influencers who make a lot of like physical content, like people who do like animal rescues or whatever. I see it a lot. A lot of my feed is animal rescues. I get why having glasses that are a camera makes sense because you're like, I'm busy. My hands are busy. I'm trying to catch it. But other than that, I'm with you, Alex. I'm just like, if somebody had these weird glasses on while talking to me, I'd be so distracted. I'd be like, I don't know about that.
I feel like we should all three have them right now and be live streaming this.
Stop. Don't give them ideas because you know somebody's going to end up doing that and it's going to be terrible. Well, Alex, we're so excited to have you here. So for the listeners, we have been talking about having Alex. Alex, you were like one of the very first guests we talked about having on the show. We've been talking about you for a long time. And just
You're
so
pod
everybody
famous.
knows, yeah, you're like pod, we've been like, we feel like we're friends with you now because we've been talking about having you for so long.
Oh, wow. That's so kind.
Yeah. Okay. So for everybody who's listening, so Alex is the founder of a platform called PodMatch, which has a bunch of tools for podcast hosts like us to be able to book guests and organize them and find people to like enrich our show. But this is special for us too, because you're one of the examples of like, we found you organically. We found you through the product. We were using the product. And I had this experience where I was like, this product, I mean, we'll get into it, but like PodMatch feels very different than a lot of other products that I could be using that do a similar task or have a similar layout. And I said to Josh, I was like, we should reach out to this guy. Like, this is an actually useful product. And so it's been so great to chat with you and to learn more about PodMatch. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. So do you want to tell us a little bit about like, what was your experience launching PodMatch? You're a huge podcast guy. So like, give us a little bit of background into your inspiration, what got you there, what was sort of the light bulb moment that made you think to go after PodMatch?
Yeah, before I even say that, Ariel and AJ, thank you so much. Like seriously, that means, I mean, you all just made my day. So thank you. And as soon as I found your all's, like saw your all's podcast from the introduction, like I was like actually useful. This is the type of content I like to listen to because it helps me make sure I'm on the track of continuing to build things that are actually useful, right?
Yeah.
So I think that maybe we'll start off that way, but we kind of fall off our course. So for real, thank you for what you all do. You all are brilliant podcasters. You all have got an incredible brand around this thing. So thank you for having me here. Really an honor.
What a nice day we're all having.
I know, right? Look at this. I'm trying to raise the positivity bar. I've been listening too much. I'm like, we got to get this up. To answer your question there, Ariel, I got started in podcasting in 2014 was the first introduction I had to podcasting. So I started a show the same year I first heard a podcast. And I got to just share this story because I think it's funny. I was actually managing, I was upper management at an aerospace company before I was doing this. And I was going to go visit one of my departments. So I like went down to the shipping receiving department, which was one that I was overseeing. And I could hear when I was like walking down the hallway, I could hear like really loud audio. And so I walk all the way back and they're all working. I look at the computer screen, which is blank. And I was like, what is this? And like, it's a podcast. I'm like, what's a podcast? And they're like, oh, it's just us listening to audio. And I look back at the screen that's blank. I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And then like, I'm back there talking to them, right? And then they just kept it playing background. I was like, hey, what was that he just said? And they're like, oh, Alex is interested now, right? And by the time I walked back to my desk, they told me I have an app that was purple on my phone at that time that would play the same thing. So on my way back to my desk, I actually found a podcast that was interesting to me and started listening. And I was like, this is actually pretty cool. You know, like I was like, I actually like this. And so a few months later, I decided to take my first stab at podcasting. And to make this long story short, I fell in love with the medium. I loved podcasting. Like it was so much fun. It wasn't always easy, but I always felt like I was learning something new. I was like evolving as the inception of this new industry was being created. Like I felt like I was actually part of it. And so 2017 rolls around. It was my first year speaking at a podcasting conference. I went from just being someone who became passionate about being a listener and a host to someone who was also speaking and training and educating in the podcasting space. 2017 got my start. 2020, just before the world shut down, I was speaking at a conference with about 2,000 people at it, podcasting related. And when I was getting off stage, right, the last thing I said was like, hey, if anyone will just give me 2 minutes of your time, I'd love to just talk to you about your podcast. And when there's not many people in the room, people were nice. So people like lined up to talk to me. So it was the last session before lunch. And I had a lot of people talking to me. I had pen and paper in hand. And I just wrote down everything that people were saying. And I kept on like asking, like, well, what is the problem that you're experiencing right now? Because again, I was passionate about this. I was in the community. I was like, let's find the problem that these individuals are actually struggling with, if there is one. And I heard a lot of things, but 100 people is when I stopped taking notes. 100 people said the same thing. It was, Alex, I'm really having trouble finding the right guest. Or someone else would say, I'm having trouble really simplifying that whole booking process. And interestingly enough, in that same room, people were like, hey, I just released this book. Do you know any podcasters I'd be a good fit for? I'm like, oh, I just talked to somebody. I don't know where he went, right? Or she's over there, right? That type of situation. But I remember going home and not having a good idea. I was just like, what do you do with this, right? And it took me a little bit, but I started whiteboarding it out. The world started shutting down, so I had more time to do this type of thing, right? I still had a full-time job at this point. But I'll never forget, I wrote all my whiteboards, and like it took every single one of them. I finally ended with these words: something like a dating app, but instead of connecting people for dates, connecting them for podcast interviews.
Yeah.
So the whole idea of PodMatch was just connecting guests and hosts for interviews and then building out an ecosystem within that. But I started it with realizing there was an actual problem people had. And that's kind of my introduction to podcasting, introduction to what PodMatch has evolved quite a bit since then, but that's how it all got its beginning.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's like, we hear all the time that like that is the best way to come up with a product idea or a startup idea. And of course, in reality, I think a lot of ideas that end up getting funded, or the idea was, how can I make as much money as possible? But like, we certainly believe that there's a correlation between an actually useful product and its origin being something that someone was like, this is a real problem that I'm identifying, and I'm going to try to solve that as like an act of community care and try to like use my talents to be able to better the industry that I'm in, the space that I'm in, whatever it is. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's been a fun journey. I will say, like, it's been a really good time. And I just continuously, when I say it's evolved a lot, I want to make sure that it's understood from anyone hearing this. We still ask the same question. We just say, what are you struggling with? And so we just continue to talk to our members, the community, people that are using PodMatch that we're serving, and saying, what else? And we don't necessarily always just ask it that way, but the idea is just we continue to innovate, but not like starting with what they want and then building what we want. It's what do they want and what do they continue to want and need.
Yeah. One of the things that really struck me, I want to talk a little bit about how like the features in PodMatch and the way the product works are refreshing and like are a bit different. So one of the first things that struck me as interesting is that a lot of the feel of the product, its aesthetic, its UX, its copy, it feels endearingly homemade. Like, it does not feel like you are trying to make a product that looks like it is in a different state than it is. When I talked to you a little bit about that, that was actually very intentional on your part. Like, it feels very much like it is you, Alex, who are talking to me, a person trying to solve a podcasting problem. And you do this through, like, you have a whole product walkthrough that you do yourself and you update it every month. All the copy, it sounds like it was written by a person. I'm curious, like, what was your inspiration for taking that path? I think, and just so everybody knows, like, what, you know, I work a lot with very early stage startups, and a big thing that we talk about is that, like, there is sort of this facade that you have to put on as an early stage startup, or that, like, VCs want you to put on, which is to make it look like you're in a different space than you are. So we talk about like Mechanical Turk or whatever, like all these things that make it look like you have more technology, more staff, whatever, than you actually are. And you try to like do wishful thinking and have people, like, the assumption is that users trust companies that look less personal than what something might actually be. And you took a totally different path with that. And like, for me personally, I can tell you, like, that is what got me to hooked on the product, is that I was like, oh, this is a guy who knows this product and who like knows podcasting. So talk us through a little bit about that process and like what your decision making was in doing that.
Yeah, thank you for knowing all that. I mean, I've been on just over 700 podcasts as a guest. Over, it sounds like a lot, but the reality is it's 2 hours a week for 11 years. So, but no one's ever brought it up the way you just did. So thank you. Like, you actually really know what you're talking about. And I want to just say, like, I want people to feel like they're meeting me. Like, that's why I do the walkthrough. And it's not, this isn't the Alex show. Like, I don't want to be like, oh, look at Alex Sanfilippo, right? Like, yeah. I do not ever want it to be that. At the same time, it needs to take on some sort of personality, right? Like I believe a good product really does. Like it needs to feel like it has something that has depth beyond just like here it is. Like I think we just live in such a robotic world when it comes to the online world. And I'm having trouble even articulating what that really is. But I just knew, I was like, I want people to feel that way. And Errol, when you told me, like you reach out, you're like, I feel like I'm talking to Alex when I'm using PodMatch. Like that, you could not have given me a better like compliment. I probably like turned off my computer and just like hung out the rest of the day. I don't know. Like it's probably what ended up happening, but it's very much so by design. Like I don't want to pretend to be somebody we're not, first off, like from a company standpoint. So like I don't claim to have a big staff. I don't claim to bring in tens of millions of dollars with this thing, right? Like, and again, that's by design. When I think about the people we serve on the host side, like we serve hosts and guests, right? The host side, they're typically solo creators. Like they're working by themselves. They have a passion, a purpose. They have something they want to get out into the world. And that's the person I want to connect with, not the person that's like, hey, we've got 20 people on our podcasting team. Do you want to like partner up? We could pay you this much money and sign a contract and all that, right? Like that's not what I wanted. And I knew that wasn't. I come from the aerospace world. I did 15 years in big corporate before doing this. And we had a lot of big contracts like that. And it was fun. I did my time though. And I was like, I actually want to support somebody that feels like me when I got started in podcasting. Like the first few years of my podcasting journey was completely alone. And I was like, I want to really cater to those individuals. Now, not saying we can't grow with people. Like PodMatch does serve some very well established creators at this point. On the guest side, same thing. Listen, we're not going to have A-list celebrities on the platform. It's probably never going to happen. Like they're welcome to join if they want, but it's probably going to be more so the person that once again says, hey, I'm still trying to make a name for myself. I'm getting my voice out into the world, or have a business that has done really well, but no one really knows who I am. That's really who we built this thing for. And I wanted the entire voice of it to feel that way and to kind of mirror where people are at. And I think a lot of it's happened very organically, very naturally. Because as a founder, I believe in doing things that don't scale, I think is the best way to say it. I think it was maybe the founder of Airbnb said that. Airbnb's founder was going to houses when they first were getting added, like initially. And he's like, this is doing things that don't scale, helps me not lose touch of the pulse. I still operate that way. I go on podcasts as a guest. I host people on my own show. I talk to members of our community. Anytime I go to a podcasting event, I want to hear what people are struggling with. I want to know the pulse of the industry. I don't want to be the founder that's like, I'm doing well, don't let anyone talk to me anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Like I feel like that's when we start building the wrong way. So for me, it's by design, and it's done from a deep place of caring and being heavily involved. And I think that's something that's missing online these days, is the founder being actually involved in the day-to-day at some level.
This was another thing that struck me when I first looked at like your homepage. So if you go to like sort of analogous business models, which I was thinking about this last night, it's like, I think an analogy would be like book a keynote speaker websites, like websites that are like, you have a big company event. Do you want to get like Viola Davis to be your keynote speaker or whatever? And those websites, they very much put front and center pretty A-list celebrities of like, oh, you can get Magic Johnson to be your speaker, and it's like, well, you could, but like how likely are you going to be able to afford it and get the booking, and what's his rider like and all that? They want to sort of do this like hook you in with maybe claims that are like not necessarily related to how the product functionally works. And yeah, again, you don't do that. When I first looked at your homepage, I was like, oh, all the people featured on here are working podcast guests. They're like experts in their field who are totally approachable people that like I'm going to be able to hear back from. And when I spoke to you, you actually have a very dramatic take on purging users because you want them to be active. Will you tell us a little bit about this? Because I thought this was such a great example of like clearly doing something to benefit the ecosystem instead of the business metrics you could use to like try to scale the company in a different direction.
Yeah, this idea of purging people, I think, came out of necessity. Like it wasn't in the original design of PodMatch. And I say necessity because I saw a problem I didn't like. And so we were about maybe almost a year into PodMatch, and I realized, I'm like, hey, there's an inactivity issue here. Like people are paying to be on the platform, but they're not using it anymore. And I was like, so are they going to come back? Like, so I started reaching out to people, and here's the thing: I know that like the kind of the general idea of SaaS, software as a service, is get as many paying people as you can, so you can talk about your user base, your MRR, right, your monthly recurring revenue. Like the idea is to get both those numbers as high as possible. And I remember sitting down with the team, I was like, I think this is wrong, because the people that we say we're here to help, we're not actually helping them by having people that are not interested in being involved right now, right? Like they're busy. Maybe they forgot they even have an account, which I don't know how you do that. Like if you're not looking at your credit card, right? Like, but I was like, somehow we got to make a change here. And so we made the decision, at that point we sent emails. We told everybody like multiple times, hey, we're getting ready to do a purge. Like if you're not using PodMatch, we're going to cancel your billing and cancel your account. That first purge we did, it literally cut the amount of members we had almost exactly in half. If I remember correctly, it was 49% of our people. And I remember posting about it because I was like, I think this is a good thing. Like, I think this was the right thing to do. And immediately saw happier people. People were feeling like, hey, I'm being heard, I'm being seen again. And we wanted that. So I posted about it. And I'll be real, I was a little nervous. Like, this was still early on, especially. So I was like nervous to post that. I posted it, and it, among podcast guests and hosts, it was loved. I mean, it still to this day gets shared. Like, right, I can still see the tags happening, people sharing it, stuff like that, which is on all the platforms, social media platforms, which is really cool. But immediately I also got hate from other founders. They said this is setting a bad precedent and a bad example for like what founders should do. They're like, your job is to make money and to get more people on your platform, not to do this type of thing. And like, so I got like legitimate hate mail for like months on end. People have been like, you're setting a bad standard for the rest of us. And I'm like, actually, I think I'm setting a good standard. Like at first I got like really upset. I'm like, did I do something wrong? Like these people are way more like experienced than I am. I don't come from this world. They've been in it forever. And then it finally just hit me. I'm like, no, this is the right thing to do. Like, if I was the person paying for this, this is something I would appreciate. And so since that day, we built in an automation. Every 30 days, the system goes through and looks at the last 13 months of activity. And someone who's at their 14th month inactive, it'll automatically email them, message them, give them 30 days notice, but it will remove them, stop their billing. At the same time, if people are really rude to people on the platform, like abuse reports are put on there, people who don't show up to interviews, like a guest or host missing, people that are just having giving a bad experience to other people. Like we don't do it immediately. We look into those things, but we want to purge that because I think that the culture that we're setting, going back to the copy even of the website, I want to make sure that that is fluid through the entire PodMatch experience.
I'm curious, and that's awesome that you were able to make that decision. I wish that other platforms did that. I'm one of those people who's guilty of not always checking my credit card statement and being like, why have I been paying for this random Adobe product for the past year? That's actually so expensive. I have two questions, I guess. One, did you consider other alternatives like a pausing schema or doing something else? And two, how did you plan as an organization to accommodate slashing almost half of your revenue? I'm assuming you have team and other people that you're working with, or how did you kind of account for that?
AJ, good points here. By the way, not looking at your credit card statement, I always think it's like the most powerful notification is hit the bank statement, but AJ's proved me wrong. So
I should be, just to be clear, I don't have that kind of money. I should be looking at it. I've now set a reminder, but it can be, just slides through the cracks. And then I like once every 6 months I'll look and be like, oh my gosh, why did I not cancel this?
And real quick with PodMatch, we have that happen more common than you'd think. And sometimes people join, forget they had it, and they message and like, hey, can you delete my account? And again, I'm big on treating people the way that I'd want to be treated. We typically just give them a full refund, whether they ask or not. We can see in the system if they didn't use it, it's like, listen, I'm not here to make a quick buck. I want to actually add value. If this didn't serve you and you didn't even remember you had it, like let's refund this person and delete their account. Most of the time, they're like, actually, don't delete my account. I want to use it now, right? And we're like, cool, here's your refund. You're starting from today's day one, right? So going back to your question though, AJ, thinking about when we did this, it was a really tough decision, once again, even from the financial standpoint, but we were very early on. There was 3 of us total. Me, my wife, who's another one of the founders, and the other co-founder, his name's Jesse. He's the developer. So the 3 of us just sat down. And at that point, we were still, I had just decided to resign from my full-time job. He left his. My wife, Alicia, sold her business in 2019. So she didn't have anything. This was her full-time thing. And, I guess we had all just become like taking it full time. And you're right. We started off with a hit basically, but we just really sat down and felt like it was the right thing to do. We knew that like, okay, there's no one other than us that's going to suffer from this. And we believe it'll be really temporary. And thankfully it was. I mean, we built back to that revenue in, it felt like almost no time at all because people had no problem referring it. They were much happier to refer it when they felt like they were getting value out of it. And so for us, we grew almost back to that. I'd say within probably 2 months, we grew back to that same, not that same size necessarily. Like that point, the cost had increased and stuff like that, right? So it wasn't as big as it was, but we were bringing in more revenue at that point. And we did look at a pause model. We later added a way for people to pause. They have to do that though. So it's not like it's still the purge is automatically going to happen, but we tell them if you're not using it, click here to pause instead. And so we do have some people that have been paused for like almost a year, which I'm like, are you gonna come back? Like they don't have to, but like every now and then we send them, I think every 6 months we send an email saying, hey, just a reminder, you still have this account if you want it. But the whole idea is just making it easy for people and only really making sure that we make it for people that are actually going to use it at the same time.
Yeah, you also have a program called Pod Value where you actually offer a like kickback to people who go any host that goes all the way through the process, booking somebody through PodMatch and then releasing an episode, which we just did, by the way, gets a little bit of the revenue split from PodMatch. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what inspired that and sort of how that fits in with your values as a business?
Yeah, this is another year into the future. So we're just kind of like going along the lines, right? Like launched it, finding the problem. A year later, found our own problem. Needed to do a purge. A year after that, when I was talking to podcasters, because it was probably 6 months before we launched this Pod Value program, I started realizing a trend that people were leaving PodMatch. And so I told Jesse and Alicia, the other co-founders, like, hey, y'all, like we have a problem. Something is not working here. I'm like, people are leaving. And I was like, well, here's what I want to do. So we changed our email. This was maybe not the wisest decision now I look back because there's a lot of people. But anytime someone would leave PodMatch, it'd say, book a call with Alex. It's a 10-minute call with me. And it didn't say book call. It said, hey, will you give us some feedback, some ideas on how to improve? And so a bunch of people did this. I mean, it was a lot before we finally, I was like, please, guys, enough. I remember one day, I did 25 calls in one day. And never again will I do anything like that. From the time I woke up until like I was done with work and it was like a Friday, I was like, I'm tore up. I'm worn out after that. But anyway, the point of this was I wanted to figure out, why are people leaving? And of course, there was the occasional, like, because your product sucks. Like, of course, that's going to happen, right? But that was very occasional. When we looked at it, over 95% of the people that had responded, and I talked to actually just over 1,000 people when I was doing this process before I finally was like, please stop. And over 95% of them said the same thing. I'm not actually leaving PodMatch. I'm quitting my podcast completely. And it was all, like, at first, especially, I was like, oh, well, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't know what to say. I was like, that sucks. Podcasting's fun. Why would you do that? But then I finally got the confidence to be like, okay, well, why are you quitting your podcast? And there was some valid reasons, like, hey, I only wanted to do 50 episodes, or it's just a test, right? There's all that's very valid. But then there was the people that said, well, this is a hobby for me, and I can't really afford this hobby. Like, it's costing me $50 a month, and I just don't have that luxury right now. And so I started hearing that a lot, and I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. We all charge podcasters. Like all of us are trying to make a few bucks off of podcasters. And so I went to the team saying, okay, we don't really have a problem, but the industry has a problem. And it's that we need podcasters for this industry to exist, yet we try to bill podcasters for every penny they're ever going to make. And I was like, there's got to be a way that if you're not one of the top 1,000 shows, that you can actually somehow offset your production cost. And so that's what led us to Pod Value, which is literally what you said. If you book a guest on PodMatch, you go into our profit sharing program, and we just basically split our revenue in half, and half of that gets split up among podcast hosts that are using the platform based on how many guests you're booking. So if you book one, you're going to get less than if you book four, right? And so on and so forth. But the whole idea was, like, we're not going to make any podcasters rich by doing this, but if we can somehow offset their production costs, if they're using some sort of video recording platform, they're hosting PodMatch, like they're using all these tools, can we somehow help them break even, or even get enough that they can hire like a virtual assistant for a few hours to kind of help them out? And so that's what we set out to do with this Pod Value initiative, as we called it. And it has been a huge success. At time of recording this, I think we're just a few $1,000s away from giving back $1 million to podcasters, which from day one, that was like our wildest dream. Could we somehow give $1 million back to podcasters? And so here we are, getting ready to do that. And I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's like it's an awesome just paradigm. And I think, yeah, the fact that you understood that like you have a responsibility in the ecosystem as a person who's trying to advocate for podcasters. And like, I think that makes sense that your identity, even before starting PodMatch, was in this sort of like mentorship role as somebody in the podcasting industry, and that you're able to like look at these patterns and say, okay, where is the industry actually like messing up? Where are we preventing people from being able to succeed in this art form? I think it's also really interesting too, the concept of like the rest of the industry being annoyed at you and like sending you messages that are like, don't do this. This is a bad model. We've actually heard that Dorian, the founder of Groover, also said the same thing, that like he was getting a bunch of hate mail from the music industry because of the way that Groover worked. And it was so much better for artists that the industry was like, hey, you can't do that. That's setting a bad precedent. And I'm realizing now that we've heard this a couple of times that like I think this is actually an excellent heuristic for if something is actually useful, is like when the industry is is picking up that they've been disrupted is their annoyance because the paradigm is that now users have more control in this new disruption. And I think that is something that like I would love to hear more founders talk about, because as a user, like even just hearing that perspective, like hearing that angle that you're coming from makes me trust you and your product more automatically. That like the rest of the industry, which I did not know a lot about prior, last year prior to starting this show, I did not really know a lot about the podcasting industry, but even just hearing that like other people in the podcasting industry, other founders who grift off of podcasters were like annoyed by that, that makes me think that you should get my business,
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, because again, that happened with this when we launched the Pod Value Initiative. Industry people said, "Hey, podcasters pay to do this. They should not get paid to do this unless they've earned it." And I'm like, I don't agree with that. Like, I don't. Like, yes, if they want to get rich doing it, then yes, you need to earn it. Like, you need to be really good if you want to be like getting rich podcasting, which happens very rarely, right? But I'm like, but in general, like, I think a creator who is showing up because they want to serve and they want to help make the world a better place through their podcast, I think it's a nice thing to put something back in their pocket. It's a way of saying thank you. I think that when you're disrupting something, the status quo being challenged is going to offend some people.
Yeah, especially because the ecosystem is so intertwined. Like all three of us host podcasts and guests on podcasts. And I think that's very common, that like, because you sort of get practice of like what it's like to be on a podcast. So like hosts are also often podcast guests. And so yeah, there's this, it's all about like the health of the ecosystem overall.
I'm really glad you brought up Groover, because there's so many parallels. Well, one, that's a music marketplace matching, reviewers and curators with artists, and yours with podcast hosts. But there's so many parallels between the music industry and the podcast industry. And honestly, I'm really inspired as somebody who's also building a music marketplace right now to think about the profit sharing model. And, if we don't have artists, then we have nothing, and I wish that more music companies would think about that as well. Spotify obviously being the big one that's being called out right now. But in general, I think anybody that's building off of the creative industries. At the same time, I think I loved your point about, some people being like, this was too expensive of a hobby, because a lot of the economics of these businesses I find are really bolstered by the hobbyist economy. And sometimes, rich tech bros, for example, that can afford an Ableton or Logic Pro subscription, and that then drives up the price for all the like real artists or real creators that are trying to make a sustainable career off of their creation. So I think it's a really interesting problem for anybody in this space to tackle, is kind of how do you segment out the hobbyists and make sure that those folks aren't artificially, changing the pricing of your product, and how do you also then profit share with like the real creators that are trying to make a living off of it.
And it goes so far beyond just business tactics. I mean, obviously our podcast, like we talk a lot about how we're talking about business practice, we're talking about tech policy practices, but like we're talking about it because it shapes culture. And I'm really into this like statistic. Anytime somebody posts something about how like Nepo babies and like wealthy young people are more likely to be artists, I just saw this stat that was like, for every extra $10,000 in a household income, a child grows up 2% more likely to go into a creative field. So like basically people who grow up with disposable income are more likely to be able to become creatives. And that's not because it's like they don't want to work. It's because everybody's an artist until the rent is due. You know what I mean? Like everybody would be making art if we weren't constantly beholden to these financial pressures. And somebody commented on that stat a really interesting point, which is that when we continue to make ecosystems where only the wealthy can afford the tools that it takes to be creative professionally, it also means that the wealthy is who shapes our culture. Like if we're not able to support working class people having podcasts, making music, making art, then we're also not supporting a world in which working class people can be shaping culture. So like it really does speak to a broader cultural issue, which is that there's this bottleneck around who can afford to have hobbies that disseminate out their thoughts, opinions, and work to other people.
That is so insightful. I mean, just think about it, like somebody that's maybe self-made, like they kind of get it. They came from nothing. They're I say self-made, right? Everyone has like a tribe around them, but they came from nothing. They ended up doing really well. Their next generation, their kids, their grandkids that just had it handed to them, that's who's shaping culture, the one that has not had to ever work for anything. I'm not saying that like just because someone's privileged, they can't go on to do extraordinary things and help and serve people. I'm not saying that's the case, but in general, we've probably all at some point had a relationship in our lives where we've met somebody or went to school with somebody that was that really entitled person that just had everything they ever wanted handed to them, right? That's not who you want shaping culture, right? Like,
Yeah.
And so I think you bring up a really good point here. Like, yeah, we're all artists until rent is due. And if we can somehow help with that just a little bit, then I think you get more authentic voices of what people are actually right versus just this small segment of humanity that is really just not the reality of what life is like. And I think that could be it could be very dangerous for the future if that trend does not get changed at some point.
And I totally believe that making good consumer products, like this might sound gross, but like I think that it is on par with any other art form. Like if you are making it from the perspective of solving a problem that you're passionate about, I do think that like this is an example of you made this as an act of community care. You saw problems in the community you existed in, and you were like, I can solve these problems. Like that is how products should be made. And so it's the same thing with like, if we're only allowing tech bros, super wealthy people to be getting funding to be able to scale their products, then like all the products that we use are going to have people who are completely out of touch with what their users are actually going through and the problems that they're actually facing. So I want to ask you some questions about how you're going to preserve this amazing vibe and product usefulness in the future. So obviously you have values that are really important to you. How do you plan on like preserving that I hope that PodMatch grows and continues to flourish and thrive and get more people staffing it. How do you like scale yourself? If right now it feels very much like it's your personal vision that's sort of holding on, you and your co-founders holding on to this idea. But we've seen that like as companies get bigger and the pressures become a lot bigger, you have more people who depend on the income of the company. Like, how have you sort of thought about what the future looks like for PodMatch?
Yeah, PodMatch has grown a lot, and I'm very grateful for that. It's to the point where I cannot be the only one with touch points anymore. And again, that was always the goal, so I'm very grateful for that. The first thing that I proactively did is I brought on an advisory board. And so I brought on a group of 6 people to cover the bases of what I believe were important. So like when I think about like, okay, this is how we want to operate as a company, what things need to be covered there? And so I'm not going to go through each of them, but some of them that are very interesting. Like you guys had a recent episode, which was really good, by the way. I can't remember the date it came out, but it was with Raj, and it was titled, "Is AI Slop What People Want?"
It came out today, actually. The day we're recording.
It came out today? Okay.
Yeah, it just came out today.
Okay, well, so it came out on October 9th, 2025, and I encourage everyone, when this one's done, go listen to that, because I actually learned a lot from that. Some very good perspectives were shared. But I bring up, because AI, I think there's an ethical conversation that needs to happen around AI these days. And so we literally brought on somebody. She's like, this isn't my title, but I'll accept it because she's an AI expert. So she came on as our AI ethics advisory board member. And so basically she's making sure that if we're using AI, it's in truly an ethical way that has human-centric first approach to it. So that's one example. We have somebody for neurodiversity to make sure that the website isn't overstimulating. The website can be used by people that maybe have ADHD. Beyond that, we're very big on accessibility. There's a lot of blind people who like podcasting. If you think about it, it makes sense. It's only requiring your ears, right? And so it's a great medium for them. So we have a lot of podcasters, both guests and hosts, that are blind and are visually challenged. And we wanted to make sure that PodMatch was fully accessible to them. That was the most expensive thing we've ever done with PodMatch, was making sure that it was set up that way. But I was like, you know what? At our core, we want to make sure it's good for that. So I bring this up because, again, we've got this advisory board to make sure that, hey, as we grow, these people get an inside view of what's happening with PodMatch. And they can say, hey, Alex, you're slipping here. Like, yeah, it's not you, it's this team member now, but we see it slipping because you told me to watch this. And so we just have a scheduled meeting with them and make sure that they can see everything under the hood. So for me, accountability is really big. So it's not just me in the background being like, yeah, I'm doing everything right. And like, I'm not, right? Like there's none of that going on. It's, hey, transparently to these 6 people, here's what we've got going on. Beyond that, we do kind of the opposite of what most people do in software. Most founders, their goal is to get away from being involved in the work, right? Because I'll be real, I have a job right now. Like PodMatch is a job. Like I own a job. I'm not like a founder that's not involved, and I'm going to keep it that way for as long as I possibly can, which is hopefully forever, right? Like we all say that. At some point, we'll all do something else.
Is there anything you've ever said no to for growth?
There's been a number of them. There's been a few different like associations that like online that the reputation that they had wasn't great. And although it was like, hey, we'll bring you in, and then you can bring all these people to PodMatch, and I'm not saying there's not great people in them, but I look at the leadership and I'm out of alignment with the leadership, I'm very quick to say no to that type of thing. And so we've said no to a lot of like partnership and like joint venture type growth things, just because I feel that it's out of alignment. And I say me, Alicia, and Jesse always have conversations about these things. And so I'm careful, even with organizations that I'm going to go speak at now. Like we just try to be very careful, kind of like who we're really like involved with at that level. And so there's a lot of things that I've said no to for sure, and including some mergers, some companies that like wanted to acquire us. I just feel that they would not carry the same vision on. And if I was just like a CEO and there was someone I was responsible to, it wouldn't go that way. I'm very quick to say no to these things. And the reality is I'm saying no to growth, like fast growth. We just have that mentality of like, we're going to grow slow, consistent, and steady, and make sure that we keep the right culture involved and keep our integrity before anything else.
Yeah, sometimes there's a phrase, go slow to go fast, of like if you're doing something methodically and carefully, then you're less likely to like flip the boat essentially and be able to backtrack if you need to. On a practical level, I'm curious, like, okay, so we've talked about, with the different features you've put in and the principles that you have that you're running the product on. Revenue and user growth at all costs are not your passion. Like you're like, I'm not going to do everything for revenue. I'm going to make a good product and let the product speak for itself. With that being said, what are some metrics that you use internally to track that the product is working the way you intended, that it's growing in the direction you intend it to, that people are happy and satisfied? What are some of the metrics that you look at?
The main thing that I look at and the main mechanism for me is daily average bookings. So how many bookings have happened per day? I have a goal for what that number should be based off like reaching that number. Sure, it ties to a revenue number. It ties to an amount of people. Yes. But the main thing that does, we kind of figure out the point of like, this is when PodMatch is at the peak of its value it can add for everybody on the platform, because there's so many verticals. Like if you think about how many different hosts and guests are on here, I mean, there's tens of thousands of people using it every week. And so it's like kind of covers everything. But we know that like based off this number, that we would be able to be very valuable for everyone on the platform all the time. In general, I'm looking at that number. Is that number, daily average bookings on PodMatch, climbing? Is it shrinking? How fast is its growth? And how much closer are we getting to that number? And then so everything I do is driven by how can I make sure that people are using it? We incentivize people by paying them. We make sure people aren't doing this stuff, like they get purged, right? Like it's all kind of built around that one number for me. That's what I track. I know if that's going in the right direction, everything else is working well.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say about pod value that I thought about as like a product person using this tool is that you have like as a value add that like you don't ever have to email someone. You can do all the booking inside PodMatch. Like we talk about interoperability. Interoperability would be like, I can email them. So an example of products that don't do that would be like TaskRabbit. TaskRabbit, you can't reach out to the person via email or phone. They like blur it out all the time. PodMatch doesn't do that. But what I think is really smart, and I want you to keep doing, is that like in order to get back money from pod value, in order to like get the reward for actually booking all the way through, you have to at least finish the loop, which is to say, I booked this person on this date, I'm reviewing them, whatever. So even if you did do stuff off the, like Raj and I are emailing now, I booked him through PodMatch, but even if you did book people through PodMatch, it's like you have to go through and finish the loop. And I think a lot of times companies like TaskRabbit or whatever, they're trying to like keep you from bleeding out the platform, but they're also doing it because they want to make sure that like you're not bleeding out so that you can finish their metrics, right? You can like finish their loop and they can get their commission or whatever. But in this case, you're basically saying, I'm not going to make the product harder for people to use. I'm going to make it better for you to finish the intended arc that we want you to go on, which is like, we talked a lot on our UX episode, a couple episodes back, about hostile UX. I don't know what the opposite is, but this is like delightful UX of just like if you do it the way we want you to do it as the product creators, you will get the ultimate payoff by like quite literally getting a check at the end of it.
I like that delightful UX sounds good. And by the way, I didn't know that Raj came off of PodMatch.
He did,
that's incredible. Like I really learned a lot from what he shared. So that's actually just really cool to hear.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we always ask people this at the end, but like, what's giving you hope for a better future for technical products? Are there things that you're reading? Are there people you're looking up to? Like, what is like making you feel like we can have a radically more useful future in tech?
Yeah, I thought about this a little bit, and I don't want to I don't want to sound cheesy by saying this, so I'll kind of give a backstory before I answer. But a few years ago, like when I got started in the space, the only podcasts I could find talking about software, talking about the online space was all strictly bottom line driven. How much money you're making? How long has your company been around? What do you do with the money? Like, are you buying cars, airplanes? Like, what are you doing? And there was just so much of that. And I'll be real, like, I'm the opposite of that. And so for me getting into software, the first few years of software, with some of these like other founders reaching out like, hey, you're doing the wrong thing, right? Like, I felt very alone. Like, honestly, I was like, am I like just trying to be like a good Samaritan for like no reason? Like, why am I doing this sometimes? And like, there's just nothing out there. And you all are a great example, like actually useful. That's what I'm thankful for is I won't just call it your show, but in general, I'm seeing more shows doing stuff like this. Is talking about, you know what? Us people, us humans, us creators, we want to talk about what's actually moving the needle forward and what's actually helping. And it's not talking about how much money one person's making, right? Off of all the rest of us. And so I think for me, like I don't feel alone anymore. Like I'll be a longtime listener of this show specifically. And I just think that that's a great thing that this now exists when previously I feel like people maybe just didn't want it for some reason. But now like I can see a future. People are like, no, you know what? I want to know what's actually out there for me and who's actually making a real meaningful difference in the world. So I answer this question by saying thank you for actually useful, because this is a really good thing for someone like me that's a founder to learn and grow from.
That is so kind. Yeah, I mean, that was our goal. Like we were in the same space just as like workers and creators. We were like, it's obnoxious that all the tech podcasts, I mean, there's like two, right? There's the tech podcasts that talk about like interview individual people and they talk about how rich they are and how they made all their money. And then there's the other podcasts, which are people by enshittification style journalists who are like, all of tech is exploitative and terrible and people who work in it are doomed. And AJ and I are sitting over here as tech workers like, wait, what? Like, we're just like, what do we do?
How do we make this productive?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, because we knew that there were people like you out there. And so we were like, how do we get like a network together? And I mean, we have big plans for this becoming like more than a podcast and being a whole network of people like you and Dorian and people who are able to get together and say like, how do you actually start to build this like toolkit of defense mechanisms as a values driven founder of saying, you know, we're not expecting people to like necessarily save the world. I don't think every good product has to be like mission driven in the sense that it does something that betters the planet. I think just making something in a way that is non-exploitative and is genuinely useful for the community you made it for, like that is a beautiful act and a beautiful creation. And I think we should be focusing more on people who are doing that. So that was very kind of you to say. I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, of course.
Should we go Falcon mode?
Let's do it. All right. If you've listened to the podcast, you must be prepared then for your Falcon sound.
Give us a Falcon sound, Alex.
Come on.
I said I wasn't going to do this. Like, I think I even said it in the original email. Like, there's no way I'm going to do that. I don't know what a Falcon should sound like.
Nobody does. That's the thing. Nobody knows. Even our Falcon sound that we like plug into the show, it's not an actual Falcon sound. Falcon sounds are like lovely.
Yeah, wasn't it like an eagle or something like that?
It's an eagle,
like,
yeah. The Falcon sounds are very like, they're very like lovely and high pitched. That's actually probably the closest sound to an actual Falcon that we've got.
You know, it's funny. I was like thinking about like, I'm glad you all said like this because I was like, what does a Falcon sound
It's like that,
And like, there was one outside, like, and I was like outside and I was like, is it going to make any noise? Like, go, you know, like, but I feel like that was pretty close and that's as good as I can do.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I don't have a new Falcon mode, a new listener submitted segment, but I wanted to go back to episode 3, the Dorian episode, actually. We had somebody write in asking for ethical alternatives to Amazon. And AJ and I both were talking about how like, this is a matter close to our heart. AJ had built her own tool to try to solve this.
It was a piece of paper. It was just a
that's a tool.
I was actually wondering, I'm like, dang, that's
it was
huge.
A flow diagram. That was it.
Tool.
And I still need to find it. I can't find it. So sometimes you don't need tech. Sometimes, you know, the paper prototype
and it
works.
makes sense too, because AJ, I feel like 70% of your Falcon mode suggestions are, what if you did this without
talk to
tech?
a person? Yeah. What if you just talk to an existing business? I hate technology.
That's good. We should all, it's healthy to have a little bit of a Luddite sheen on the whole tech industry, you know? But I wanted to plug this app because we came at that question of like, how do I stop buying on Amazon from an e-commerce lens, and we named a bunch of like sustainable alternatives to Amazon, or like ethical alternatives depending on what ethic, if you're doing sustainability, if you're trying to do like boycott, divest, and sanctions or whatever. And I do think that was the way that our listener asked the question, was like, where else, how do I know where else to shop? Is there like an extension that can do it? But I did want to plug this app called Commons, which is not a new app. Do either of you use this app? Did you know about it?
This is the third time that somebody's referenced this app to me, but this is my first time actually checking it out. No, I should get this though.
I am using it. I'm a huge fan. I can't believe I'm just now learning about it. But basically Commons, I don't think there's another app like it. So Commons is a sustainable budgeting app. And I will speak for myself. I got really into, like, I genuinely enjoy boycotting. Like, I think it's like a fun challenge. Like no buy days, I think is like fun, like for me to prepare ahead of time. And it's kind of hard. Like, it's challenging, and I feel like it's a really healthy habit to get into. So Commons is essentially an overconsumption trainer. So you go in and there's like two different pieces of it. You hook up just like you would any other like budgeting app. You hook up your cards that you want to hook up, your credit cards, your debit cards, whatever you want to put in for spending. And it's essentially all the type of like budgeting tools, but it's for like hitting your sustainable and ethical goals. So there are like two different pathways. There's sort of group goals. So they'll have a challenge. So I think, like, I want to say September, because it was the new iPhone came out last month. They had like a don't buy new tech challenge. So you can like opt in, and if everybody participates, then you get like a group goal. So you get back these things called seeds, which different programs then use. It's like a rebate program. So you can earn seeds for hitting either your group goals or your individual sustainability goals. And then you can use those seeds to like, as you know, gift cards essentially at sustainable partner stores. But then you can also do your own goals. So you can set a goal for yourself to be like, I want to spend $200 on Amazon and nothing else this month, or I want to do, you know, no buying from Walmart or whatever. And then when you meet your goal, like, it knows because it can see what you're spending, and then you get your seeds from it. And I have been loving it. I'm really into it. I think they have a really good UX in terms of like it gives you the reports of like what you've spent on. And I think this is a thing that I enjoy doing like functionally, but I couldn't find a good way to know. Like, I like the idea of like, okay, say that you're going to spend like no more than $50 on Amazon, instead of just being like, don't buy on Amazon, which I find to be like a lot easier to be like, okay, $50, whatever. So I just wanted to plug that as a solution to a problem we've already visited, since I'm really into this app right now.
I think it's very cool, and I think AJ is going to learn a lot from it, so she can see those subscriptions she's had for too long.
I was about to say, this is full circle.
Yeah, I'm really liking it. And the people who made it are all like really, I immediately went into like, who's your team? And it's all very cool people in tech. I would love to get them on the show and talk about the app. But yeah, there you go. Commons. We'll link it in the episode description. And folks, we want to hear from you. Give us your problems that could be solved with tech, your app ideas that you want some thoughts on. You can hit us up on most social media at actuallyusefulpod, or you can email us at heyactuallyuseful@gmail.com. Alex, it's been incredible talking to you. I feel like we all got a little dopamine boost from this conversation. Everybody's walking away being like, wow, we're all really good at what we do.
This was great. You all did a phenomenal job, and I'm honored to be here. This was so much fun today.
Thank you. We appreciate having you. Well, everybody, have a great week, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye.
Actually Useful is part of the Industry Plant Podcast Network. It's co-hosted by Ariel Butters and AJ Weaver. It's executive produced and edited by Josh Stratton Carlson. If you like the show, please consider subscribing to our Substack or YouTube at Actually Useful Pod, or give us a follow on most social media platforms.